Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Soccer Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. We have a great show for you today. We will be covering Chelsea taking on Arsenal. We'll discuss Inter Milan taking on Napoli, Liverpool Villa game. We'll do a full preview of this weekend's Premier League action. And please stick around for the end of the show where I'll be giving you my reaction to some of the top headlines going on in the soccer world. If you have a question during the show, we want to hear it. Your input is a big part of what makes the show successful, and you thrive on your energies and insights. Whether it's a quick comment, a thoughtful question, or an opinion you just have to share, please hesitate to drop it in the chat. And if you want to make absolutely sure your message stands out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that. Use the super chat button at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. This guarantees that your super chat gets read on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. We really rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. So go ahead, let us know what you're thinking. Hit that super chat button and let's keep the show as interactive and exciting as possible. And if you prefer, you can always go to the GSMCpodcast.net to tip, donate, and leave a comment or question there. We really couldn't do what we do without your amazing support. We're so thankful to have you as part of our community. We have to start off with Chelsea taking on Arsenal. That's a interesting game, huge game coming up. If you're an Arsenal supporter or anyone that has anything to do with the club, massive game between two teams that have had a really good start to their campaign, or Chelsea's had a really good start to the campaign. Arsenal, who had a pretty good start but have been slipping of lately with losses to Newcastle and Bournemouth, which slips them to fifth place. This is a team that entered the season as title contenders, as the second favorite to win the Premier League. Now they're sitting in fifth place through 10 games. They're already 7 points off Liverpool, 5 points behind Manchester City, and they put themselves in a vulnerable position where if they drop points yet again to Chelsea, they can really, find themselves really on the outside looking in terms of a title chase going forward. And of course, that's the opposite of what Arsenal wanted. Arsenal last year didn't have the greatest of starts to their campaign, had a few games here and there where they dropped points, and they had a tremendous second half of the season, but just some of that early season struggles just eventually came back to bite them. Because in that second half, they only lost to Aston Villa in their whole since January on. They only lost one game. And people talk about the Aston Villa game as the game that they lost the title, but to be honest, no, they lost the title in some of their slip-ups that they had earlier this season. In Arsenal, they were determined to start off this season not having those slip-ups, and it started off really, really well, despite not playing good football, not really dominating games, dominating possession, dominating creation of chances, still being efficient in the way you get the results, taking advantage of set pieces, taking advantage of individual moments of quality from certain players, playing a game, allowing the opposition to have a majority of possession and play off of that. And Arsenal did a really good job of getting results, specifically the Villa game, the Tottenham game, and then the City game, defending literally the entire second half with 10 men. They did a really good job of that. But of lately, it's just that the lack of creativity is really, exposing them. This is an Arsenal team that's lost 3 in their last 6 games. The Bournemouth lost, the Newcastle lost, and then they also lost midweek to Inter Milan's almost a B team. The fact that Inter Milan had Napoli to play later on, they decided to rest a few guys. We'll talk about the Inter Milan Napoli game in a bit. But yeah, going back to Arsenal, it just hasn't been great. Kai Havertz, in terms of strikers, or number 9s playing game in and game out, hasn't really been as effective of late. Is on a drought himself. Is not really getting as involved in play, even when he drops down into midfield. Isn't really that player that we are that we expect of him to be, or that is expected of him to be, and yeah, there's issues with Arsenal that now a lot of Arsenal's issues is that lack of creativity without Odegaard. Odegaard didn't make his first appearance since that ankle injury he suffered against Norway coming on against Inter Milan. Will he be fully ready for this one? I think that's hard to say. It is a timely return, but I don't think he can step in right away in a game at Stamford Bridge. But again, he almost has to start because they just, playing at Stamford Bridge against Chelsea and not having creativity could be a death sentence. You need the creativity of him to play those cute and clever balls in midfield, to play in those tight spaces, because you don't get much creativity outside of the team. You don't have creative fullbacks that overlap and create. You don't get creativity from your wingers. Your wingers are more direct players that want to take the players on and try to run in behind. And then Kai Havertz, he's a tidy player. He'll pick up little pockets and be effective and get on the end of things. But again, he's not the most creative players in terms of creating for others. So Odegaard is essential to this team, and you saw they didn't create that many quality chances without Odegaard. Game in, game out, they against the better teams they relied on set pieces and individual moments of magic to get their goals. It was clear there's a lack of creativity, in the attack. And if Odegaard is able to start, I think that is a big addition for Chelsea and for Arsenal, and I think it makes them a different team. As far as Chelsea, now Chelsea have had a really good start to their season, but the one thing that you could if you wanted to be critical over is that they've played 10 games, they've only lost 2, but the 2 games that they played were against good opposition, and I'm not saying Chelsea have not they've played Bournemouth, they've played teams that could cause Chelsea issues, but against the two teams that are at the top level, they lost, and they showed good signs in both of those games, especially that second half against Liverpool. Now it's another test for them going up against an Arsenal team. We get to see, with this game being at Stamford Bridge, we really get to see, is this team really at that level? Can they compete to reach the Champions League next season? Are they at the level of Arsenal? I think we got a good look at that. I think we have the individual quality of players to match with Arsenal. I think Chelsea definitely has the individual players to, if you're talking about the depth, and then you talk about the quality from the players like Nicholas Jackson, Cole Palmer, Noni Madueke, Caicedo, Lavia. There's quality in this team, and then you got amazing options off the bench like Pedro Neto, João Felix, and Kunku. You got Mikhailo Mudryk, £100 million player, struggling to get any game time outside of the Conference League. That's how loaded this Chelsea team is right now. They move the ball a lot more quicker than in the past. They're not afraid to make the runs in behind, and they got the quality in midfield to pick out those balls as well. They're really playing the front for Cole Palmer. He's been amazing. He hasn't been a one-season wonder. He's been dropping into midfield and getting involved. He's scored a goal. He's been able to take advantage of the opportunities when comes for him to take advantage of. He's also effective on the edge of the box, finding players in terms of creating for others. He's been great. In Chelsea, they've gotten an elevation of a lot of players that had an impact last season, or that didn't have that great of an impact last season, especially for what you expected of the transfer value, I guess, to put it that way. But yeah, for Chelsea, it's just another really good test. We get to see, is this team up there to be able to compete with teams like Arsenal? Do they have that in him? I'm looking forward to how Chelsea are able to unlock that defense that Arsenal has. Now, Arsenal have I have an issue though. Declan Rice, he will potentially, he's a doubt with that broken toe for that Chelsea game. So that midfield is already a little thin. In that, who's gonna play that role? You know, next to next to I assume it'll be I assume it'll be Mikel Merino. Um, who's gonna play that role with Mikel Merino? I think it's gonna be Thomas Partey. Can they control that midfield with Thomas Partey and Merino? I think if it's only them two, like they did against Inter Miami or Inter Milan, I think they'll struggle to control Caicedo and Lavia, because Caicedo and Lavia have been playing some excellent football. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to see if how does the Chelsea wingers, how does whoever starts. I assume it'll be Madueke, and that left hand side has been a little bit of a difficult choice for me to make. When I was making the pregame preview, you have Pedro Neto, you also have a player like João Felix that can play in that role, or Nkunku or something. It'll probably be Pedro Neto though. How do Pedro Neto and Madueke, with their directness, with their verticalness, take advantage of the likes of Jurian Timber and Ben White? You know, how does Nicholas Jackson Fair, playing against Saliba and Gabriel, can he use his pace to get in behind? Can he make it difficult for them? Can he occupy them? That allows opening for other players to make late runs into the box to get on the end of things. Little tidbits like that. There's a lot to this game that I'm very interested about. I think this has the opportunity for Arsenal to reignite their title hopes and bring the momentum back towards them after the slips lately. For Chelsea have an opportunity to make a real statement that this is a team that that the top team should respect, and that can be a dangerous outfit if you're any top team in the Premier League going forward. I think this has an opportunity to be. I think will be a statement game for both sides. For either or, unless it finish. Obviously, if it finishes a draw, then it's just like whatever. Short break here coming up, and when we come back, we will do a preview of Inter Milan taking on Napoli.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Bef- Before the break, we discussed Chelsea taking on Arsenal. We move on to do to preview Inter Milan taking on Napoli. Huge game coming up in Serie A. Huge, 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 huge game for Inter Milan taking on Napoli. So right now in Serie A through 11 games, Napoli are top of the table with 25 points. Inter Milan are second with 24. Inter Milan are coming off this game with that win over Juventus or over Arsenal in the Champions League. They're also coming off two consecutive wins in Serie A against Empoli and Venezia. They're in a good moment right now, and they find themselves back at the table after that Milan derby. They were a little bit in a vulnerable position. Napoli, on the other hand, look, this season they have been great. They've gotten some big wins. But if you look at the recent game form, last game they lost to Atalanta 3-0, and they just got done by an in-form Adamelo Lukman and Matteo Retegui. They got done by Atalanta, who can be a difficult team to play against. They won Europa League last season for a reason, and even in the Champions League, they make it difficult for teams. They have that little bit of quality. They have a really good style of play. They're managed by Piero Gasperini. They're a brilliant team. But again, if you're looking at it from Napoli perspective, it's not a game that you should go crazy panic for. I think 3-0 was a little rich for the score. I do think Atlanta was deserved winners because they were more clinical and they were more ruthless when the opportunities arose. But at the same time, I don't think it was a 3-0 game. I don't think that tells the story of how really the game went. But that's not to near here there. If you just look at recent form, Inter Milan have gotten that victory, and that allowed Inter Milan to bridge the gap with Napoli entering this game. Napoli did have a little bit of a gap before that loss that they suffered to Atalanta at the top of the table, but now Napoli have a chance to really announce themselves. So if they can beat Inter Milan, the team that's won two of their last three Serie A's. The other team that won the Serie A was actually Napoli in that period. But yeah, the team that's won two of the last three Serie A's, if they can go in and beat the defending Serie A championships at San Siro, it announces yourself as a legit, title challenging team. But that is difficult because Inter Milan, they hardly lose games. They've lost one game so far in Serie A this season. They hardly lose home games, period. It's so hard to create good opportunities at San Siro. And then when Inter Milan get on the end of a good opportunity themselves, they're just so clinical. They're just so professional. They're managed really, really well. And yeah, it's gonna be very, very interesting to see how this game goes. It's a game. It's really, really tight in my opinion. It's really, really tight. Inter Milan, who are led by Simone Inzaghi, they've only, I said they've only lost one game in Serie A. They've only lost one game the entire season, and it was that derby to AC Milan. The thing with Inter Milan is that they're consistent in terms of they don't concede much opportunities. I think they had 3 consecutive clean sheets entering this one. And then. So it's hard, that back of Pavard, Cherby, Bastoni, Darmian, and Di Marco. It's hard. It's hard to create opportunities against. They're so balanced in terms of in terms of their wing backs pushing up and then getting back in defense. They're so balanced. They close up all the spaces, and it's just hard to play through them. And also the good thing, if you're an Inter Milan fan, is that you were able to rest some of your key players in that one as well. Acerbi was not involved. Bastoni was not involved in that one. Mkhitaryan is not involved. Di Marco was not involved. A lot of Thuram was not involved. When I say they weren't involved as starters. Some of them came on later on, but obviously, there's a lot of players in this one that are going to be rested and that can make the impact. As far as Napoli, we know the quality Napoli has. I think the key is this one is number one, Lukaku, when the opportunities come, his consistency, his ability to play through the likes of Acerbi, Pavard, Bastoni, and he can make it difficult. Him being that lone striker, you can have a number advantage because him being the lone striker, you having those three center halves. It can be difficult, to match up with the wingers. With the fact that Lukaku's going to be that lone striker, that could, it'll be difficult for that back three to match up with him, to deal with him. But yeah, I think the key to this one is number one, Scott McTominay. Making those late runs, can he have an impact? Because, creating the clear-cut opportunities through Inter Milan is very, very difficult. But one way that you can is making late runs in midfield, going up against a team that plays a back three. You make late runs in midfield, it makes it difficult to track the runs, whether it's one midfielder that drops down and takes the runner, or it's one of the center half that meets him, halfway through where he's making his run from to try to close it off. When you're dealing with late runners into the box, against that system, against that style of play, it can be difficult to defend against. And then Billy Gilmour, I think he can have a big impact, especially if you have a player like Anguissa playing next to him that can do a lot of the dirty work, that provides the athleticism in there. If you have Gilmour next to him, I think Gilmour is a player that's not afraid of the big moments like this. His first international football game came at Wembley at the European Championships against England. And he was the best midfielder on the pitch there. And that would be 2021, that European Championship, right? So he would have been 19, 20 years old. And he's a player that has a lot of character, and in the big moments, he's not going to shrink. And I think he will be the key to playing any transitional game that Napoli wants to, because I think once they get the ball through him, to him, he has that little bit of quality where he can do a quick Cruyff turn. He can do that little bit of skill, little bit of technical ability to find space in midfield, to play that initial ball that can spring the attack. He has the ability to do that. He has the technical ability in midfield to do that. So I think he will have an impact in this game. Him and both McTominay, who've had great impacts to Napoli as well. And overall, it's a fabulous game to watch, and I'm looking extremely forward to it. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we will do a preview of Liverpool taking on Aston Villa.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Before the break, we discussed Inter Milan taking on Napoli. We move on to do a preview on Liverpool taking on Aston Villa. Big game coming up between a Villa team that's trying to get into the top four yet again, and Liverpool, who are in the midst of a title race themselves. Great start to their season. They have they have 25 points to their first 10 games. They've drawn one game. They lost one. Early on this season to Nottingham Forest. They've been absolutely brilliant. They're already 7 points clear of an Arsenal team that was the other real major title contender outside of City, who they're 2 points above. As well, defensively, they're really, really solid this season. They've only conceded 6 goals. They have that balanced approach now, not the extreme high-flying way of Jurgen Klopp, but also they're able to create a lot of opportunities and play some good, open-ended attacking football. But at the same time, they're willing to be a little bit balanced. It's not 99 miles per hour. It's not 99 miles per hour day in day minute 1 to minute 90 plus. There's a little bit of professional about them, that they know how to see games out, that if they need to put a few players behind the ball, they'll be willing to do so. They're not gonna do an all-out extreme press from the get-go. They're balanced on it. Sometimes that they'll rely on the counter-attack to create opportunities. Other time they'll be able to dominate possession. It's just all measured, and it's something that Liverpool have not really been in the past under Jurgen Klopp. It's been, let's make this game as heavy metal as possible, as chaotic as possible. We thrive in chaos. We don't need to create opportunities. We'll let the press create it for us. We'll just win the ball back in dangerous areas, and that's how we create our opportunities. And it was successful. Jurgen Klopp was successful. He was brilliant at Liverpool. But at the same time, there was a few moments where those sort of tactics could put you in a vulnerable position. And it's just different with Arne Slot. I'm not saying it's better, but it's still efficient. It's still very, very efficient. And Arne Slot has literally taken up where Jurgen Klopp has left off. Now, is this sort of style, is this the answer to beat Manchester City? I don't know, because City still have Guardiola, and they have the best talent array of in the Premier League. When you look at the quality, even now they still have crazy quality throughout that entire team. Manchester City does. So, but going back to this game against Villa, obviously that's a difficult game for Liverpool. This game will be played at Anfield, which we know Anfield can be a fortress. So there's that Aston Villa have to deal with. Now you look at form of these two teams. Obviously, I talked about Liverpool. They've been great so far this season. In terms of recent form, they had that big win over Leverkusen, and then they beat Brighton over this past weekend in the Premier League. You look at Aston Villa, though, not great form. They had that colossal, horrible way to lose that game against Club Brugge with that handball from Tyrone Mings trying to bring the ball back into the 6-yard box to take the goal kick. He ended up handling it. And then they suffered that really bad loss away to Tottenham, that a 4-1 loss that they suffered. So the form is not greatest, but if you look at early season, Aston Villa have played some really, really good football. They're measured about their approach, and they have a manager that gets the best out of the sum of their parts. A manager that can elevate the level and the quality of individual players and get them playing as a unit, as a team, much better than what the individual, players on the pitch says says that they should do. So Aston Villa, they're not going to be out of this one just because they're playing at Anfield and they're not coming on good form. They'll still put on a really good effort because it's a professional team. It's a team that beat Bayern Munich in the Champions League this season. They beat them for a reason, They can hang it in games there, and it takes that one moment of quality. In that game against Bayern Munich, it was John Duran. In this game against Chelsea, it could be somebody like a Leon Bailey. It just really takes that one moment of quality with Aston Villa because it's just a very, very professional and organized team. From back to bottom, they're structured. They have a really good goalkeeper. Defensively, they can play in a compact block and make it difficult for teams to play against. They can be open and they can be pressing up and open, and they'll still be able to defend themselves relatively well. I think in midfield they do a good job of controlling games in midfield. I think Morgan Rogers playing in that attacking midfield role has been a revelation. I think I'm thinking of Tano. Tielemans and Onana do a really, really good job in there. John McGinn in terms of being able to control possession and all that. And then in the front they have players like Ollie Watkins, who has a big impact on this Aston Villa team. This season though hasn't been the greatest start for him, I have to say. This season I believe he has 5 goals in his first 12 games, which is not horrible, or 14 games. You talk about Premier League and Champions League. He does have 5 goals in 10 games, which is a goal every 2 games in the Premier League, which is not bad. But there's been certain times where we question whether he's starting because of if he should be starting because of how really good Jean Duran has been on the bench. And keep in mind, Jean Duran tried to leave Aston Villa before the season, and and he couldn't really quite get the move, but it is paying off dividends for Aston Villa, who has that dynamic goal threat off the bench that can come in and gain you more points. He got them that win against Bayern Munich. I believe actually he started that game against Bayern Munich. But yeah, there's that when it comes to Aston Villa. But overall in this one, I can't see Liverpool slipping up too heavy because of the expectations now with Liverpool, the professionalism, the consistency. It's an extremely professional football club, and I don't see them losing many games from here to the end of the season. And obviously a loss will come. I just don't see it. I don't see it in this one. But yeah, it's an interesting topic to have. Show break here coming up. When we come back, we will do a full preview of this weekend's Premier League action.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Before the break, we did a preview on Liverpool taking on Aston Villa. We move on to do a full preview of this Premier League weekend. Obviously, I'm not going to go too much in depth of the games I already discussed. Liverpool taking on Aston Villa. Chelsea taking on Arsenal. Obviously, big games there. There's also other really big games coming up this weekend. We're already in match day 11. Time is flying by. The start of the season seemed like yesterday. Wolves taking on Southampton. Wolves, their season has been, it's been a heartbreaking season. They've lost a lot of tight games. They're creating a lot of opportunities, but they're not being clinical. And on the other end, they're just way too easy to play through. They've started to improve that slowly over past few games, but the results are still not coming. But they did have a really, really, really tough schedule, and now it's starting to get a little bit more easy. It was Southampton team, a newly promoted team who's been fairly not that great this season and have had some okay performances and then have had some really, really poor ones, and you really don't know what you're supposed to expect in this one, because I think both teams are teams that have inconsistent natures about them, which makes this just a hard game to call. So I'm just gonna make it safe and consider this a draw. Brentford take on Bournemouth. We know what Brentford can be. They're they're a team that can always play up to opposition, and they got little unknown players that are gems that show their levels. They're very, very determined team, and they can be devastating team to play against because they will sneak up on you. They all work really, really hard. They put in a shift with or without the ball, and then when you do get on the ball, it's really hard to play through them because they already got a guy there, trying to suffocate you almost. As far as Bournemouth, they've been so good to watch this season. Just quality here and there. Very, very, very open and fun to watch. And they've gotten some big results against big titties, not cities, big teams. They beat Manchester City. They beat Arsenal. I believe, or they lost to Chelsea, but played a really, really good game against them. I think they had a draw against Aston Villa. And they made Liverpool. Made Liverpool look ordinary at times when they took them on, despite Liverpool winning that game. So I think Bournemouth is a great team to watch as a neutral, and this game will be really, really good to watch. Again, I'm gonna go with a draw again because that's a harder one. West Ham, they haven't improved much, even with Lopetegui coming in. There's not been much improvement. They pretty much the same teams that they've been in the past couple of seasons with Lopetegui compared to what we've seen with Moyes. And as far as Everton, I think they're finally starting to figure out some of their early season woes. And they're just, Everton is Everton. It's a team that can play a low block with Sean Dyche, and then occasionally can create a few opportunities of themselves and pull off a surprise here and there. And I think, in this one, I just think, West Ham being a team that hasn't really improved, I think they can take advantage of West Ham here. Crystal Palace have been not that great. They've had some really, really, really good past, when we saw how they ended off last season. But they don't look like that same team. They're not creating as much opportunities. They're not as interesting to watch as well. Fulham, they've been really, really good team to watch. They take advantage of the opposition that are poor. And then when they take on some of the good teams, they play a good game, and it's little moments here and there that makes the difference. It's certain individual mistakes, but overall as a unit, Fulham is a really good team and a team that has quality. I think Andres Pereira is an underrated player in midfield. We know him as him being involved as United, but he has that quality. Andres Pereira does. He's a really, really good player. Brighton take on Manchester City. Brighton, entering the season with Fabian Horiziller. I say this all the time, but there was that unknown element to them. But their recruitment and the way that they choose managers is just excellent. They're a well-run oiled machine as a club. And now they're back up, on the rise. They're, I believe, sitting in 6th or 7th. And I think they're a team that's not afraid to take on anybody, including City. Again, City had a really good start to the season, but over recently have been a little bit underwhelming. They have not really gotten out of first gear. Is the game against Brighton the game that they finally get out of first gear? I don't know, but they have quality. City does, of course. Obviously they have quality. They're the best team in the world. But yeah, I think City will get that victory. United taking on Leicester, the Ruud van Nistelrooy, interim role at United continues, and yeah, I think every game that goes by with Ruud van Nistelrooy, it's almost an audition for him whether or not he should still be involved in the backroom staff when Ruben Amorim comes in. And yeah, I just think they'll have more quality than Leicester, and I think there is that little bit of a new manager bounce happening. So I'm going to favor Manchester United in that one. Tottenham take on Ipswich. Tottenham, some really good performance, and then some really good performances, but no cutting edge. But now of lately, they're starting to score goals. They can be extremely really good team to watch, and then they can be extremely frustrating if you're the manager, if you're a fan or something, because they've had periods of lacking that cutting edge, but they're starting to develop it, and they just need to develop some sort of consistency. I don't know if top four is well within the grasp for them, because of how difficult top four is nowadays. But they're a good team, and I think they're managed really well. I think Ipswich Town can be a difficult team to play against, and I think Ipswich Town have certain players with the quality, like Liam Delap and Jack Clark. But other than that, I don't think they have much to really threaten Tottenham there. And yeah, I put Tottenham as the easily as the favorites in that one. But yeah, a lot of games coming up so far in the Premier League this weekend, and let's just enjoy it. Before I do the next segment, I do want to say I will be moving next week to the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast. It's a new show. It's an all sports included show. It's more all around, so it's not just soccer. So the GSMC Soccer Podcast will be coming to a pause. I will not be involved in that anymore. I am going to move shows. So yeah, I just wanted to make a quick announcement that this time next week, around still the same time, 11:30 we'll go 11:30 Central Time, 12:30 Eastern. We will do the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we'll react to some of the top soccer headlines. Before the break, we discussed this weekend's Premier League action. We move on to do a reaction of some of the top headlines going on in the soccer world. We got to start off with this has been a topic now for a few times now. It's again Mourinho, who's now the manager at Fenerbahce in the Turkish league, and he's been pretty outspoken of late. And he has been issued a one-match ban and had been fined after he went on a rant about Turkish football and him saying that he was fighting the system and that officials are, biased against him. The Turkish Football Federation Disciplinary Board described Mourinho's comments as unsportsmanlike, and they fined him actually 900,000 Turkish lira, which is about $26,000, for questioning the impartiality of refereeing and other match officials. Mourinho will be suspended for a game for that, and he said a lot of interesting things in that conference as well. So Mourinho, he will be suspended for that one. Rodri versus Vinicius Jr. over the Ballon d'Or. Um, they uh, they actually announced the margin of Rodri's victory. He only had, Rodri won the Ballon d'Or was 1,170. He only had 41 more points than Vinicius, who had 1,129. So it proves that it was a close race, and people did value what Vinicius did in the Champions League and all that. But again, they value, you know, after the vote, they truly came to the decision that you need a combination of major success at the club stage and international stage to be considered for this award in a year that has a major international trophy. Pep Guardiola, he was very, very surprised by Jack Grealish being called up to the England national team. Guardiola and Lee Carsley, they're a little bit of on a collision course because of Jack Grealish being called up, despite um, despite the injury that he suffered. Grealish, he has not been playing for City since October 20th, but he was involved in the England squad, Nations League squad, as they take on Greece and Republic of Ireland this November. By the way, this is Lee Carsley's last international break as the England manager, at least in this term. Thomas Tuchel will come in next international break in March. So yeah, but yeah, Guardiola, when he was asked if he spoke to Carsley before the England squad were released, Guardiola said, "No, I'm not the guy to say you cannot go." He later added, "Before my team tomorrow, he's not fit. He cannot play. The people from England believe he can help, so go." He was in the gym for a few minutes yesterday. No, that's actually something else. But yeah, Guardiola is perplexed about the fact that Jack Grealish is receiving a call up for England. The Canada Soccer Association actually did an independent review, which confirmed that the Paris Olympic drone spying scandal amongst the Canada women's national team spying on New Zealand pre their first opening game of the Olympics. So it actually ended up leading to Bev Priestman, their manager of the Canadian women's national team, actually being suspended for that entire tournament. And I still think a suspension she's still dealing with to this day. But they came to that conclusion that the drone spying scandal is not an isolated incident and is a federation issue of spying using drones. Canada Soccer announced that they retained Sonia Regan-Bogan of the law firm of Matthews, Dissendale and Clark to review the incident that happened at the Olympic Games, the spy incident, and anything that could be related when it comes to that. The Canadian Soccer Association also said that it was reviewing the report, and they expect to release conclusions and future steps within the week. Bev Priestman and then assistant coaches Jasmine Mander and analyst Joseph Lombardi are all serving 1-year FIFA suspensions after New Zealand's Olympic Committee, and not the New Zealand Football Federation, the New Zealand Olympic Committee for all sports. They filed a complaint with the IOC in terms of the integrity with the drones, with the alleged drones, taping. And actually, in that tournament, Canada ended up being penalized 6 points in the group phases and fined 20,000 Swiss francs. They're a team that won the Olympic Games in 2021 and put themselves in a vulnerable position with that 6 points. They still ended up advancing to a group, but then they lost to Germany on penalty kicks in the quarterfinal. The CSA board chair, Peter Agruso, said, "We know that more needs to be done, and changes take time." USMNT's Josh Sargent, he will be out for 8 weeks after he had that surgery on his groin. He had to undergo surgery for a groin injury, and he will be out for 2 months, which includes the November international window. in which the U.S. will be taking on Jamaica to move on the Nations League. His manager at Norwich, Johannes Hoftorp, said he has had the surgery and it will be 8 weeks from there, which was Monday or Tuesday. Now it's just about rehab and nice and easy getting back in it. So yeah. Apart from that, thank you guys though for tuning in to the GSMC Soccer Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really makes a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. So thank you once again and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Mm-hmm.